Hey there, everybody. Happy Wednesday. No, oh my goodness, it's Thursday already. Happy Thursday. So, today, seventh graders, we're looking at adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So, you should have your notes notebook out right now. At the top, let's start by dating it like we usually do. Today is the 28th. All right, so adding and subtracting fractions. Here's our learning target for the day. It's really similar to what we did yesterday. So I can add and subtract fractions. And subtract. I'm going to abbreviate subtract here with S-U-B. But today we're looking at fractions with unlike denominators, which, like we talked about yesterday in class, this should be a little bit of review, hopefully. And here's what we have to do. So I can add and subtract unlike fractions with unlike denominators by, and yesterday we had two little bullet points, and here's what you need to know about today for what we need to do by doing this. Number one is converting, again, mixed to improper fractions. And the second thing that we have to do today is look at something called a like denominator. And we can convert mixed to improper fractions and convert to like denominators. So yesterday's homework, all of the fractions, if you look at them, the denominator, the bottom number was exactly the same. Today it's not going to be. So that's what we really have to figure out. We have to figure out how to find a common denominator and then what is the best way to add and subtract those with a common denominator. So let's go through a couple examples today. These are going to be straight from your homework, and the notes today will be mostly example based. Before we get to those examples, though, there is one thing that we want to write down, which is about finding the common denominator, or the LCD, lowest common denominator. So in order to find the lowest common denominator, what you need to think about are multiples. So for example, if we have this fraction, let's say 2/3 plus 1/4. Well, 3 and 4 aren't the same, so I cannot just add these. And I can't try and keep my denominator the same because those two are not the same. So I have to convert those. Well, what's the lowest common denominator between 3 and 4? Well, the easiest way to find a common denominator is to multiply the fractions by the denominator of the other. Now, that sounds kind of weird. Multiply the fractions by the denominator of the other. What that means is you're going to take the 1/4 and it gets multiplied by the denominator of the other fraction, which is a 3. So I'm going to take and I'm going to multiply by 3. Now I just can't multiply it by a denominator of 3. This whole thing, in the end, idea of being equivalent means that it's the same. And the only way that I can make these fractions the same is to multiply by a 3/3. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other fraction. So my denominator of 3, I want to multiply it by a 4/4. And what this does is essentially, if you think about fractions as parts of something, or the way I like to think about it as pizza slices, it essentially makes all the pizza slices the same size. And so multiplying fractions, which we really haven't gotten there a whole lot, I'm just going to multiply these together. So 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 2 is 8. So 8 twelfths plus, all right, 4 times 3 is 12. And 1 times 3 is 3. Great. Now I've got my common denominator, so I can just add my numerators. Check your notes from yesterday if you don't remember how to do this fully. It's what we worked on yesterday. So 8 plus 3, well, I'm going to do exactly the steps we talked about yesterday. Rewrite my denominator first, and then I'm going to add these up. So 8 plus 3 is going to be 11. Can't reduce it. I'm done. Okay, so let's move on to a couple more, and we're going to do maybe just 1 or 2 more from your homework assignment tonight. I'm going to adjust the camera so you might see like you just saw my fingers there a little bit. Okay, so on this one, I got a little more space here to write. Let's look at, on your homework tonight, this is going to be let's do number 7. That's a nice one. So number 7 looks like this. 4 1/5 plus 6 3/4. Now hopefully you go straight to these denominators and say, okay, well, those aren't the same. I've got to convert them to be a like denominator. But if you look back up at our learning target, one of the first things we said is that we have to convert to improper fractions first. And I'm going to emphasize this, and Mr. Trimble is going to make you do this, even though sometimes it seems like a lot of work. So I need to convert these to improper fractions. So 4 times 5 plus 1 is 20, plus 1 is 21. So 21/5 plus 6 times 4 is 24, plus 3 is 27. 27/4. Now I'm going to convert these things to a common denominator, which gets to be a lot of multiplying sometimes if I do it this way. If you want to, I'm going to show you an alternate method here in just a second. So times by the denominator of the other, by 4/4, times by 5/5. So that's going to put my denominators to be 20. 4 times 21 is going to be 84. Plus, all right, same denominator, 20. And then 27 times 5, I don't exactly know what that is, but I bet I could figure it out. I know that this is almost 30, right? 30 times 5 is going to be 150. This is 3 numbers less, so 3 numbers less times 5 is 15. So if I took 150, which was 30 times 5, and I subtracted 15, that would give me my answer of 135. Awesome. Great. So now I've got my 2 fractions there, and the next thing I just need to do is add them. So 84 plus 135 is going to be, well, 80 plus 130 is 210, and then 4 plus 5 is 9. So 219 out of 20, and then we convert that back to a mixed number. For sake of time today, I'm not going to do that. Here's the other method that I can do. Instead of going directly to the improper fraction, I could actually convert these to my common denominator first. Plus 6 3/4. So here's the same problem. If I look at my common denominator of 20, well, what if I just multiplied this fraction part and put that to a common denominator? Well, I'd end up with this. 4, and if I multiplied these by 5 over 5, 5 over 5, and by 4 over 4. Okay, well, 4 times 1 is 4. 5 times 4 is 20. Plus 6 and 3 times 5 is 15. And 4 times 5 is 20. That guy might actually be able to add without even putting this to an improper fraction. I think about 4 plus 15, that's 19. And 6 plus 4 is 10, so that'd be 10 and 19/20. That works out nicely. And these, if you look at my final denominator here, if I had 219/20, that's the same as 10 and 19/20. And this is going to be 10, right, my whole numbers. And then my fractions together are going to be 19/20. Now that worked nicely because these have both positive numbers. being added, but it's not always that easy. So one of the things I really have to make sure to look at is what exactly is being added here. So let's go ahead and do one more problem. I'm going to flip my page here so that we can look at this one. So let's do one that is not so nice and easy. This is number, let's go with the number 12 from your homework. And when I look at number 12, it looks kind of nasty. It says negative 18 and 5/12 plus 14 and 3/4. Now I've got the same strategies that I could use as last time. If I wanted to, I could actually convert these to a common denominator before I flip them to improper fractions. It's going to be a bit of multiplying either way, but hey, let's go ahead and do that. So 12 and 4, my lowest common denominator here is actually the number 12. 4 multiplies, it's a multiple of, 12 is a multiple of 4. 4 multiplies to be 12. Well, what does it multiply by? Well, 3. So if I actually multiply this fraction by 3 over 3, I'll get a denominator of 12, and that gets me going on the right track for this math problem. Okay, so 18 and 5/12. That's nice. I don't have to convert that 18 and 5/12 plus 14, and 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. Great. Oh my goodness. I've got a common denominator. I don't even have to flip to an improper fraction. How nice. And you'll find on your homework tonight that there are a number of problems like this, where you only have to convert one of the fractions to be the common denominator. So make sure that you're watching out for that. So then let's go ahead and look at this one. Well, negative 18 and 5/12 plus 14 and 9/12. Oh man, that's going to be pretty tricky to try and do this mentally. Or I'm going to have to think about like borrowing from the whole, and Mr. Trimble will not teach you to do that. I'm going to always teach you to convert to an improper fraction. So here's what you need to write down. If you have different signs, something like this, positives and negatives for fractions, convert to improper always. Different signs, just always convert it to an improper fraction and it will work. Sometimes we mess up if we try and borrow from a whole. Okay, so ignore that negative at first. 18 times 12. I might have to pull out some old multiplication here to solve this. So 2 times 8 is 16, carry my 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Put down a 0 to hold my place. 8 times 1 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. Add these up. That's going to be 216. So 216 plus 5 is going to give me 221 twelfths. Add that negative in, plus, oh man, more scratch work. 14 times 12. Okay, so 14 times 12. Well, 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. Put my 0 down. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. 128 plus, 140 plus 28 is going to be 168. Okay, 168 twelfths. All right, now this is going to get some tricky additions. So you guys, as 7th graders, when you get these pretty big numbers, please, please, please make sure that you're adding and subtracting correctly. So in this one is my negative 221 plus 168. Well, I'm going to think about some of the strategies we thought about last week. If I went under the water 221 feet and then went back up towards the surface 168, I know my answer is still going to be a negative. So my denominator is still 12. My answer is still a negative. So really I'm looking for what's the difference, 221 minus 168, and I know my answer is going to be a negative. minus 168. Okay. Well, 1 doesn't subtract from 8, so I'm going to have to borrow. Make that a 1. So 11 minus 8 is 3. 1 doesn't subtract 6, so borrow. Make that an 11. 11 minus 6 is 5. And 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, there we go. So 53, and that's a negative 53 twelfths. Well, let's convert that back to a mixed number. So how many groups of 12 go into 53? How many groups of 12 go into 53? Well, 12 times 4 is 48. So there's going to be 4 holes in there. And, oh, I almost forgot my negative. So I'm actually going to white this out and make this a little bit neater when we write it out. Okay, so equals, make my equal sign a little bit smaller. Negative, can't forget those negatives. So 12 times 4 is 48. 53 minus 48 is going to give me 5. So 4 and 5 twelfths. Negative 4 and 5 twelfths. That cannot be reduced, so there's my final answer. Guys, as you can tell, some of these uncommon denominators are going to give me a fair amount of work. So you're going to have the rest of class today to work on this. Like I said, some of these problems, here's what your homework looks like. Some of these problems you don't have to convert both of them. Like number 1, I can only convert my negative 1/2 to a denominator of 10, and I'll end up getting the right answer, or the common denominator of 10. Here's what your work looks like. Most likely you're going to need to show your work on a separate sheet of paper. There's not always enough space on here to write all of your work down. So you're going to have the rest of class to work quietly on this. Remember, I'll be back tomorrow. So we will talk more about adding and subtracting uncommon denominators tomorrow, but you guys need to stay on task and get as much of this done as possible. What you don't finish is going to be homework for tonight. Okay? I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.